have the honor to welcome you to our next keynote, in this case from Dr. Simon Harrer, joining us from InnoQ, Germany. He will talk a little bit about how to work together over distances, how to sort of handle and navigate those new hybrid settings that we all experience. And I'm really looking forward to the call. And with that, Simon, stage is yours. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian, also for having me here. I have brought a very personal talk today. I will tell 3 stories of my life where I grew together over distances. And I chose this topic, grow together over distances, because in today's world, we cannot stop. We have to grow, we have to learn, we have to build stuff, we have to argue, to bond with people in today's fast-moving world. And we can't do that alone. We have to do that together with others. Maybe in a small team, maybe with our small team and other small teams, in larger teams, in a department, in a company, or even in communities. We can't tackle the challenges we have today alone. We have to work together, and for that we need connections with these other people and work together. And the thing that happened recently is that we work together more and more over distances. Being it spatial, have you seen in the keynote in the beginning, or in the introduction, I think, from Jan, where he showed all the places where Festo has locations, being from India to several countries in Europe. And so it's spatial, it's time zone-wise, it's language-wise, so which has the first language is so if the people don't have the same first language, there's already a distance between them. That you have to overcome in working together. Cultural and educational can also be distances. So today I want to share you 3 stories of my life where I grew together with others over distances. And we want to analyze the success factors from all these stories. So have a seat, lean back right before lunch, and stay a while and listen. The first context I want to share is in esports. So have fun, good luck, and that's always the form we greet each other before a game, before a match. So we want to be good-mannered, of course. So in 2002, I was 16 years old. This game was released, Warcraft 3. And some people here cheered in the back. That's a real-time strategy game, was quite popular. And the cool thing about this game is it has a multiplayer mode where you can play against other people online. And it has a unique matchmaking system that was new at the time. So you could say, I want to play against some other people. I just say, find me an opponent. And the system would look for others looking for opponents at the same time. It matches one based on level. So there was an algorithm behind, and then it will bring them together and start the game immediately. A game takes about 20 minutes. You have to gather resources, you have to build your base, you have to expand, you have to train your troops, send them to the enemy, and try to destroy them or make them give up, basically ending the game. That was my nickname back then, and I played thousands of games. I don't have an accurate count anymore, but like when I came back from school, I started this, and then at some point I had to sleep and so on and so forth. You get the impression. I was not very good, but I was not very bad either. There was a metric, how good you are. It's a proxy metric. It's actions per minute. I had 120 actions per minute on average in the game. So if it was intense, you had more actions per minute, and this translates roughly to 2 clicks per second. On average, and when it's intense, even more. And so it's a really intense sport, although not going outside, but it's really stressful playing these games. After 20 minutes intense playing, you can be soaked. This is this is me back then. So I was able to qualify, I don't know why, by happenstance, to qualify to play for the top 16 players in Germany at the Games Convention in Leipzig back then, before a huge crowd. And I was not very good, so I immediately lost. And I was immediately kicked out. But I got this as a consolation prize. It was a BenQ MP3 player that can hold about 3 songs. So, but why I'm telling you this? I didn't play alone most of the time. I joined a clan, which is kind of an organization where you organize players. So one organization, like a football club, something like that. You can play against others in leagues. And I met my teammate, Kiwi. And 80% of all my games, I played together with him. And with him, I grew together over distance because Kiwi lived 500 kilometers from me. And in the first 2 years we played with each other, we haven't met at all in the real world. Sounds maybe familiar in the work context somehow during pandemic when new people joined your team. So we both played from our basement, but we had also different other cultural contexts, a different educational background. He was a little bit older than me, which makes a difference at the age level, and so on and so forth. But for me, that was one of the best times in my life, having enjoyed this. So what did we do here? We grew together. We played these games. We had also some success. But what were the success factors that enabled us to work so well as a team, playing 2 against 2 online over and over again? The first one is a tooling in the sense of audio channels. We used Ventrilo for that, and it still exists. I looked it up, but I don't think it's used so often anymore. And the cool thing about Ventrilo is that when you connect, you have a list of all the channels in there, and when you join a channel, you can immediately talk to all the people in that channel. And you can, with one click, you can just switch to another channel. And for us, this tool was like, we used this as a room for training together, for playing together, but also for all the small talk. And this was used by the whole clan, by the whole organization we were in. So, and that was back in 2002. And this is how we coordinated. And I think without these tools, this would not have happened. I would not have been able to play so much with that person and enjoyed it so much. So tooling, remote tooling is important. I'm a little bit sad that most modern tools like Teams don't enable this quick switching in between channels. You can just immediately, within a second or less than a second, you can immediately switch to another video call or to another voice call where the people are in. And also the concept of having a room online, your team room online. This concept is also not often seen in today's remote collaboration software. Another thing was that the game itself had a great collaboration feature. For instance, I could send a ping, a location signal, which is hard to communicate by language. You could just say in the lower left corner, these green circles. I could send this ping and send it here, and in the minimap from the other person playing with me, the signal will turn up. And I could communicate quickly, making communication very efficient. So when you look at your tools that you use in your day-to-day work in a collaboration way, how do they support you? Is it helpful? This brings me to another feature. They introduced the feature where you could share control. So I could control the units of my teammate, and he could control mine. And in theory, that sounds great. A lot of new possibilities. Like some collaboration tools promise some super cool new collaboration feature. And in practice, it didn't really work. I think it was about what you're used to, what you're accustomed to, and nobody wanted to change the way they work. And sometimes remote collaboration tools is the same way. They promise something that sounds good in theory, in practice, it doesn't work. But the most important success factor for us was because we play these intense 20-minute games, where it can be very stressful because the opponent is pressuring you, time is ticking, there's no way to pause the game. It just continues. And you have to make so many decisions in this high-pressure situation. For us, it was very important that we never blamed the other person. We always focused on learning. And I think that was the most crucial part that made this possible, growing together over distance in this special context. At some point, I realized maybe I have to finish school And so I left this gaming world, said, good game. That's how you end the game, to be good-mannered. And that's the first story. The second story is a little bit different from the context. It's in the open source world. We're jumping a little bit forward into 2014. I was doing my PhD at that time, and when you do your PhD, you typically have to manage all your literature to quote stuff correctly. I did write my PhD thesis with LaTeX. It's like coding with pain. That's important. Coding with pain your PDF files. And this is a tool that manages literature that fits well to that LaTeX world. I used it. I was one of the users of this tool. And at some point, I had a look at this tool. There's a fun thing about this tool. So it's used by really thousands of people all around the globe, researchers in this technical domain, from professors, like students all over the world. But at that time, the development basically came to a halt. No one developed it anymore. There was one maintainer that kept it on life support. But nothing happened anymore. But it still had this huge user base. But no innovation happened. And by chance, in the field I did my PhD in, this maintainer had the same area of PhD that I was in. And so we kind of connected by chance. We immediately liked each other and said, okay, let's make this better, because this is a Java application in the back, in Java Swing. And it's really horrible code. It feels like Java 1.0 when we started looking at the code. It's even, the tool itself has been used in a lot of scientific literature to study bad and unmaintainable software. So it was a good case to modernize. So what we did is we moved from SourceForge to GitHub, because on SourceForge nobody were anymore, and all the people were on GitHub. We modernized everything from Swing to JavaFX, from JUnit 3 to JUnit 4, introduced CI pipelines and a release process, and all these things that you normally would do in your project as well. And now it looks a little bit better. But the interesting part here was how we work together. In this case, we formed a core team at the beginning with the maintainer and me, and this grew to about 5 people that managed it. And there we, next to each other, we had all the contributors that formed the community of this open source project. And in the end, we even founded a non-profit organization and have a regular yearly conference on the tool, the ChapCon. The interesting part in this is it's really work from anywhere, anytime. So this is really completely distributed around the globe. Contributions come in from people in all countries in the world, well, almost all countries in the world, and really from many different people. The quality of the pull requests and the issues and the contributions varies extremely. So it's a very distributed setting. It's also a low trust setting, because when I get a contribution, a merge request, I, as one of the core team members, have to be the one that merges that change, and then it's my responsibility. So I have to check whether the contribution has bugs or has security issues or something. That's my responsibility. So low trust setting, and we used GitHub for that. So what were the success factors there where we grow together over distance? Because we had distance in all directions, in language, in spatial, in culture, everywhere. How do we handle that? The first was reduce barriers. Make it easy to help, make it easy to contribute. I think that works also in any corporate case, when you have other people from other departments, make it as easy as possible to help, to contribute. The next point is we were asynchronous by default. Because of this low trust setting, we even used asynchronous to work in the core team, which we needn't have done, because in the core team there is trust, but not to all the other outside contributors. But in this context, it made sense to say we go all in, we use it as a default way of working using pull requests and this asynchronous style of working. The other part is you have to be kind and quick to be successful in that setting. Because people come in, they provide their contribution, and if you are not quick enough and kind, they will not follow the contribution to the end until it's merged. And then you have something half done. And half done is just waste. But that takes a lot of time from ourselves. So this was, but this is how we grew up the community. So we could grow together as a community over that distance. And the last point, in this asynchronous setting, writing well is the superpower. It's always about writing. And try to write so that when others read it, they don't have too many clarification questions. Because then you have this ping pong, and when you do the ping pong, not within your company and teams, but with other people that have completely different time zone, and they just have a slot for working there like once in a week, that this issue or this contribution can extend a very long time, or at some point stop dead and again have this half-finished work that's never been mergeable. So write well, that's the key in this asynchronous setting. But at some point, again, I had to finish my PhD. I stopped focusing on open source stuff, which I was not funded. That was my free time. And so I removed myself from the project and moved on. That was the second story. The third story is about professional software development. It's now 2018. I was done with my PhD. I joined InnoQ as a consultant. And I started a project at a customer here in nearby in Stuttgart. I was living there at the time. My other members were Martin and Jochen, were in the near area, but not too close. And we didn't have any office there. So the setup was from home back in 2018 already. And our product owner was from Hamburg. What we did, well, we started the project, and what do you do in the first week of the project where you have the kickoff at the customer? So we went there for the first project. We got to know the domain. We made all the architectural decisions that shape how we will build stuff. And then you had this issue that I just came from university. I have no clue how to do this in the real world, how to develop software in the real world. I had a little bit clue from the open source experience, but not in the real business world. Then we had Jochen, who had a lot of experience as a consultant, having built lots of stuff already. And then we had Martin, who has more of a background in integration and less in building. So we said, okay, let's build the first service. Let's start the first service together, because we were so on different levels of skill. Let's build the first service together, so we learn from each other. We have the same. So that all the other services that follow will look a little bit similar and not completely different by whoever touches it the most. We did that. And then after the week, we went home and we said, okay, we really liked working together, building that service together, like one screen, sitting around that screen and building the software together. And we just continued from home. And that's basically how we transitioned into a full-time, remote mob programming. 1 year later, I posted this tweet, which got quite a few likes back then. I've been doing remote mob programming full-time for a year now. 1 year without daily stand-ups. 1 year without waiting for reviews. 1 year without handovers before holidays. 1 year at home without feeling alone. I don't want to work differently anymore. And I can still sign that 3 years, more years later. So what did we do then? What is this remote mob programming? It's defined by Woody Sewell, by all the brilliant people working on the same thing at the same time, in the same space, on the same computer. We adopted the definition a little bit and saying in the same virtual space and on the same shared screen, but the principles still apply. And well, this is how my day looked all the time. It's now more familiar. In 2018 was quite new. One person sharing the screen and the others looking at that and trying to find a solution. We did this for 4 years all the time, every day. We rotated every 10 minutes, so the person that shared the screen was switched every 10 minutes, just rotate through. And the rest of the team was always in this mode of discussing the problem, agreeing on the solution, and then instructing the typist. So the typist was like a reactive, high-level interface to your IDE, to your system. And you could instruct the typist with very high-level commands. You don't have to say, go to file X, line 4, and press A. That would be a very low-level command. But think of a very senior developer. You can tell them, okay, we need this new feature. You describe it, and they can immediately start going forward. You can deliver very high-level commands, and you and the rest of the mob can simply focus on whether it's really the right problem to solve, how we solve it, and can course correct while the typist is typing ahead. For that, we handed the code we handed over using Git over temporary branches. We developed a tool for that, which is now quite popular, 1,600 GitHub stars, and has been featured in the ThoughtWorks Tech Radar 2 times. And it works like this. So when it's my turn and I start, I just type in the command line mob start 10, and it starts a 10-minute timer, and my temporary work branch is initiated. Then I'm the typist and I get commands, I do stuff. And at the end of my turn, I type in mob next and I'm done. And this creates a temporary commit that just pushes my local state onto the GitHub. And I keep open my shared screen. And now Jochen comes, he steals away my screen share, types in mob start 10, and is ready to go. And you can do this in less than 10 seconds if you are trained. Now the rotation, the switching you can do in 10 seconds, and then you have another 10 minutes for the round. Just the handover cost can be minimized to 10 seconds. Okay, that's the same happening here with Jochen typing stuff as a typist, doing the mob next. Then we have Martin as a third person. And at the end, when you're done, you just type in mob done. It will take all the changes that happened in here, pushes them in the staging area in Git, and then you can do just a commit and do it finally, and just push on the main branch. And this is how we worked every day. And we always push to the main branch. We use trunk-based development, and when you after the push on the main branch, our tests ran, and when the tests were green, we pushed to deploy to production. So there's nothing in between. Immediately in production. That was cool. Software development is more than coding. We did everything together. We've written emails like customer support requests together. We worked in the Miro board and did some designs together. We created architectural decisions together, making choices between whether we go left or right or don't go at all. So we did really everything together. And when you work that way, this has consequences. You have to work at the same time. And this means you have to align on your core working hours. And the better you align, the more time you have together. You have to. So what we did is we agreed on the same lunch hour. We agreed on maximizing this time together because we've seen how valuable that is. This is an interesting aspect because it's against this freedom of you can work anytime, anywhere. No, we gave that up because we've seen how much impact we had when we worked that way. Another thing is the whole team focuses on one thing. And there's a limit that makes sense how many people should be there. We think that the best setup is 4 because then you have this resilience to 3. And with a 10-minute rotation with 4 people, it's your turn every 30 minutes. And that's the rule of thumb. Because if you're not, it's not your turn every 30 minutes, the Twitter or nowadays, I don't know, there's no LinkedIn, I don't know, what's the replacement, this becomes more and more attractive. So this is what we did. We had a team of 4. And why was this so cool? So we had constant momentum. So whenever we took a story, and I'm always using this metaphor of a train, we put that story on the train, we put all the people that can work on that story on that train, and the train's moving. And the train never breaks because we make sure that all the obstacles gets moved out of the way. And we have only a work in progress limit of 1. We have only the train with that ticket on it. And we move that forward until it's done. No waiting for code reviews. No, nothing. Just that ticket until it's done in production, and then you move on to the next ticket. And this feels slow, but it's actually extremely fast. And it's extremely exhausting. It can feel like a drug. And you have to make sure that you make breaks if you do that. We did that, we learned that lesson ourselves. We almost burned out at the beginning, and then when we enforced breaks, and then it went much better. Because it's addictive. You always deliver stuff. You always deliver value. And for me, that was the best thing. You learn from the team because sharing knowledge, sharing your thought process with the others, while you discuss the problem, while you discuss and compare the solutions. It's, for me, as I came from university and I didn't have experience in building software in that scale, I learned so much in that time. It was really like the learning highway for me. Maybe also a funny story on onboarding. We have one person here that we onboarded. It's Nico. He's now even still in the team here. And onboarding with him happened so. So he joined the team first day. And at that day, he was the ticket on the train. The whole day, he shared the screen, and we made sure that at the end of that day, his setup was complete. And he made a commit into production. And the second day was back to normal. And he was just part of the team. 1 day of onboarding. Okay, something seems wrong. Okay, sometimes we are blocked. There's a problem. And what we do, we issue the product owner signal. When we are blocked, we say, product owner, help us fix this, clarify this thing. And for that, we build a tool. In this case, it sends a small message into the chat system mentioning the product owner and giving a Zoom link so they can immediately join our working session. The product owners that I worked with, they immediately saw the benefit of coming very quickly because they knew they had like 4 very expensive developers being blocked. This is kind of the horror situation of any product owner. They don't do anything more productive. They might just, I don't know, stop working. This feels very wrong. So we had very good time to product owner with that tool. So they really had a very inherent need to join. But what's in it for the product owner? Why? Because our product owner loved the way we did the work as we do. For them, everything we did had high quality. There's the saying from Peter Drucker, you can't inspect quality into a product. So when it's done, or when a pull request has been created and it's already feature complete, it's very hard to make it high quality again because it's already done. In my career, it's not often refactored. In this case, we made sure that the quality was adhered to why we built the system. And that means for the product owner, less rework, less bugs, basically no bugs. Next part is everyone was an expert because the knowledge was shared so well. They could just take everybody with, like, you could pick one and take them to a meeting with another team. They could represent the team or could answer the questions for the product owner. It was not this senior, super senior lead engineer that when that person is on vacation, nothing happens anymore and there's no one who's knowing what's going on. And the last part was time to market. The product owner could say, this feature is the most important right now, do this. We put that on the train and a few days later it was in production. And when our product owner realized that he has now this power to say, I want this feature, and 3 days later it's in production and with high quality, they didn't want to us work differently anymore. So what were the success factors there? Well, we had this small team that also had an autonomy. We were allowed to just choose this way of working. No one forbid it. We just used that. If we didn't have that, this would never have happened. We weren't able to grow together in that way. We decided to do that. We all worked from home and had the internet with hardware and software that was necessary. I think it's very hard to do that in an on-site location because it's very hard to get this room all the time for your team with a large screen and a system just for you all the time blocked because offices are not set that way. So it really works much easier with this home office approach. And last but not the most important factor was when you're the typist, you're really in the spotlight, and this can create some might feel very uncomfortable. And we made sure that there's a safe space where you can feel vulnerable and nobody is exploiting that. And without that, it would not have been possible. I think that's the most important factor there. So this is the way I want to work now. I'm staying. But, well, actually not. As most people, I left for data and AI because at some point that was the cool thing that I wanted to move on after 4 years. And for me, what was really impressive was that the team wrote a 120-verse long epos about the history of that team. And I have never experienced that anywhere else. This commitment, this team bonding we had that led to the team writing a 120-verse long epos before GPT. That were my 3 stories where I grew together over distances. The esports, where we had this pair playing, so to say. We had the open source community with a more asynchronous way of working. And then we had the small team in the professional software development. But what's the essence here? What's the takeaway? For me, it's this team feeling. In our world, this is what often lacks in this remote or hybrid, whatever setting. The team feeling. How to create a good team feeling, a team bonding. This strong connection between the people. And for me, what I experienced that working together or playing together at the same time, at the same thing, that has this extremely strong bonding effect. And there's nothing stronger. So in my maybe last words, I know of no better way to grow together over distances than with this full-time remote mob programming way of working. So this is it. Thank you. And little provocative question at the end. What's your excuse of not doing that? Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. That's a good question. I was asking that myself. Before I can comment and/or question, are there any questions in the audience? There is one. One sec.
Yeah, thanks. We are also huge fans of mob programming. We use it mainly for training, so not on a daily basis, but for internal trainings. And you mentioned screen sharing, but did you also try these advanced tools for collaborative working in the IDE or so? What's your experience there?
Excellent question. Maybe remember the slide where in theory, some collaboration tool is good, but in practice, it doesn't work out. For me, this is exactly the case with these tools. Because the problem is not typing in parallel in a shared IDE. The problem is focus. And typing is never the bottleneck. So that focused on typing as a bottleneck. I would rather not have multiple cursors or multiple things happening, but just the typist where everything comes together. And yeah, that's the short answer. So I see why the tool vendors build that. Also, in theory, it's great and you can sell, but it's in practice, I would strongly advise against it.
Pretty much our experience. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, so would be a quick question. So mob programming is basically expenditure of pair programming, but as I was missing an explanation, it's really good if you're working in the same time zone, but what if the team is international? Say different time zones, Americas, Asia's, Europe. How do you see mob programming working in this way?
No, it does not work. That's a problem in the sense. So you have to shape the teams around the time zone. I know from some experiment that said let's mob around the globe and always the handoff or the overlapping, but I don't think there's a business case for that. It's an interesting exercise, but there's no business case where you have the constant handover and when you need that quick delivery. I don't think that's worth it. That's a downside. You have to be at the same time. There's no way around that. I made good experience with India. So I coached a team at an e-commerce shop in Hamburg, and they had ThoughtWorks India coming in, and that worked well because the time zone overlap was not too big, and that also has to be said. The Indian people were really coming. They adapted their schedule to the Germans, so they made the sacrifice.
Did you have any, would say, obstacles coming from the customer to do that stuff, or to put it bluntly, how to convince him to pay 4 engineers for one problem?
So we just did it. We didn't ask for permission. I think that was crucial. And then we delivered. And then no one cared. But that's only half truth. What we did as well is we had an asynchronous channel where we daily posted our progress to give the manager a feeling of control. But that was very important because the manager always wanted to have this sure fixes and all these regular meetings or dailies, and we said they just don't make sense for us. That we are still together all the time. But for you, we write up what we did, what we plan, what our feelings are, like a pulse on the team, and put it in a dedicated channel. And that allowed us to kill those meetings with the management.
Hi, Simon. So if you're into the AI world now, maybe let's make the link to that. If you see mob programming as sort of pair programming or back-to-back programming, one could say that programming with AI would also go into that direction. How would that fit, or how would you make the link also in then minimizing efforts around programming, such as waiting for reviews, etc., etc.? Does it work in any way, and what benefits would you see out of them? Thank you.
That's an awesome question. So one answer is it's not about typing. So it's about thinking of the problem and prompting the solution, so to say. And then again, this helps because the rest of the mob has to explain the solution so another person can type the prompts in. And this would still work. You would be even faster probably using AI for coding, for development. But I'm not sure that will help too much because the problem is always thinking, making the decision. Should we go left? Should we go right? Should we use that framework? Should we use that framework? How do we shape that interface? This is what you and that's why you put the brain power. I think you could use AI for just the typist could be quicker. But then the others have to decide more quickly, and I'm not sure that will happen so fast. I think the bottleneck is the thinking and decision making of humans on the problem. Yeah, I think what you can do, what AI is very good is saying you have different options and help you in making that choice. You can ask it what are pros and cons when you don't know the technology too much. These things. Yeah. But in the end, the decision probably has to be taken by humans still, and they have to feel confident that they took the right decision. And you have to get the agreement of the team.
So since you mentioned about mob programming, and as a developer, you were able to take decisions faster and move forward, the question is, would you guys spend time in creating user stories, creating tasks, and spend time more on that? Or since you know what exactly is the problem, you jump into working the problem and getting things done faster?
So when you work this way, a few things change. So the user story is not that detailed. Doesn't have to be. It has to be capture the essence of what the product owner wants. But you don't have to detail it out for someone else to implement it, because you just detail it out while you work on it. So you don't do too much. You don't spend too much time in Jira, which is a good thing, I think. And there was another aspect. Sorry, I can thought.
Have to spend more time on this one, or it was just as simple as you
Yeah, what also changed, that was what I wanted to mention, is we didn't care too much about commit messages. Because writing commit messages together is very time expensive, and we didn't really look up because we had the knowledge in our heads. And this is also where I see AI as a real enabler. Just create the commit message using AI and be done with it. It would be better, because at some time we just try to minimize the commit messages as much as possible, sometimes just saying update. We didn't really care anymore. It was not important anymore. Yeah.
Maybe just a quick question regarding deployment. You said you had one branch and you always deployed directly to prod. Did you ever have any issues or things that you had to roll back due to that?
We basically had almost no issues. There were some, and we always fixed forward. There was no going back. And we used feature flags a lot, so we could put our code quickly into production. It's all the things that you do with trunk-based development. But as we did, all like 4 or 5 people created that code together. It was really well thought through. And when some person said, "Okay, we missed this," they will raise their hand. And that really had. I don't have any numbers, but the actual bug count, the tickets that we marked as bugs, I would say they are less. Like in the 3 years, I would say less. I don't want to lie, but less than 30 over the 3 years. Yeah.
Okay, so let's take the last question and then postpone the rest of the discussions to the open floor and the rest of the day.
Yeah. So the question is from Konas. I was asked: is programming, where is the main value for the customer? Speed, quality, costs, or something else? Is mob of 3 devs make 3 user stories faster and better than 1 developer per user story working separately in parallel? And in what framework mob team work? Kanban, Scrum, sprints, or something else?
So the easy question first. So Kanban is a very nice fit. But anyway, it can work for anything where you can just say, let's start with that ticket, work on it until it's done, and move to the next. And this fits with the Kanban work of the column of doing, done, next from to do, doing, done. It's more the natural fit. But we did have some Scrum process at that customer project. The other thing is that's the money question. Is it worth doing it? And it really depends on whether you can have a benefit of a better time to market. That's where it boils down to. Is it worth for you if you say, I want this feature and in the next 2 days it's done and in production and in super high quality? Does this help you? Yeah. The second question is, how do you handle sharing knowledge? How good are you at distributing the knowledge in your team, learning from each other? How would you say? Is it good? A little bit shaking the head. It also optimizes on this as a second thought. And when you say our advantage would be being in a great knowledge distribution and a time to market, then I think it's easy. But it's still, of course, and the question comes over and over again, is it worth it? And I can only answer it in that way. It's very hard to I don't have a use case in saying we had this team working that way and this team working that, and we compared them, and we can show that this is 10% more efficient. This is very hard to do these studies. Maybe a last argument, what sometimes used for managers, there's this from lean software development, the 7 wastes of software development. There's things like rework, context switches, and 7 categories. And what mob programming basically does is reduce the waste as much as possible. So you can focus on what matters. That's also a nice saying, but it doesn't really help when the people still have trouble saying, well, why should we have 4 people doing one thing where we could have them developing on 4 tickets in parallel? It's very hard to convince people.